It began like any other Saturday night. Two young people in love, a simple plan, a quiet city that had no idea it was about to wake up to a nightmare. In Knoxville, Tennessee, January 2007, Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom were the kind of couple everyone rooted for. They were kind, grounded, and full of life. They had spent that afternoon together doing what young couples do, talking about plans, picking outfits, laughing over dinner ideas. They had plans to meet friends later that night, just another easy Saturday, filled with laughter and the kind of small promises that make life feel ordinary. Yet, nothing in those quiet moments could have warned them how quickly everything would change. But by the next morning, both would be gone. What unfolded over the next 48 hours would become one of the darkest stories in Tennessee's history. This is the story of Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom. Channon Christian was 21. She was a senior at the University of Tennessee, just weeks away from graduation. She studied sociology because she wanted to help people who didn't have a voice. Her friends said she had a laugh that filled the room and a heart that never turned away from anyone in need. Her parents, Gary and Dina Christian, described her as their light, focused, compassionate, and endlessly kind. And as for Christopher Newsom, he was 23, a former high school baseball star turned skilled carpenter, known for his big heart and easy smile. He loved simple things like his work, his family, the game, and Channon. He was the dependable one, the kind of man who always showed up when he said he would. Together, they were steady and bright, two people who believed in building something lasting. That Saturday evening, Chris picked Channon up from her friend's apartment on Washington Pike. A security camera caught a moment that would later break hearts across the state. It captured Channon stepping out, smiling, running into Chris's arms, the two sharing a small hug before heading out. And then moments later, they were gone. By Sunday morning, panic had set in. Neither had answered their phones, and messages went straight to voicemail. It wasn't like them not to call to check in. Shannon's parents started phoning her friends, then the police. At first, officers suggested they might have gone away for the weekend, but the Christians and the Newsoms knew better that something was wrong. That same day, a railroad worker in North Knoxville made a grim discovery along the tracks. It was the body of a young man. Before long, the police confirmed what both families feared. It was Christopher Newsom. He was barefoot, with hands bound by a shoelace. His body had also been wrapped in a comforter and set on fire. He'd been raped and shot while Christian's body was found 2 days later inside a trash can in the Chipman Street rental home. She'd been bound and raped before she was wrapped in trash bags and put in the trash can and slowly suffocated to death. Hours later, Channon's Toyota 4Runner was found abandoned just a few blocks away, parked near a small rental house on Chipman Street. The investigation quickly pointed toward the house itself, a place that, from the outside, looked ordinary, but inside hid the kind of horror few could comprehend. The property was rented to Lamarcus Davidson, a 25-year-old who was recently released from prison after serving time for armed robbery, and living with him were his half-brother, Latalvis Cobbins, his friend George Thomas, and Eric Boyd, a local man with his own record of violent offenses. Also staying there was Vanessa Coleman, Cobbins' 18-year-old girlfriend. What brought them together was nothing but chaos, drugs, desperation, and a shared disregard for human life. Investigators later learned that on that cold January night, they had gone out looking for someone to rob. They didn't know Channon or Chris. They just turned out to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. 2 days later, police entered the Chipman Street house with a search warrant. Inside, they found evidence linking every suspect to the crime, like fingerprints, personal belongings, DNA, and signs that something unspeakable had taken place there. And then, within a week, all 5 suspects were captured across multiple states. Davidson was hiding in an abandoned house just a few blocks away, while Cobbins, Thomas, and Coleman were arrested in Kentucky, while Boyd was later picked up in Knoxville. And finally, the city could finally put names to the faces behind the nightmare. For the families, the grief was immediate, but answers came slowly. The investigation unfolded piece by piece, revealing a crime that shook even hardened detectives. Local news reporters described the atmosphere in Knoxville as heavy, almost surreal. People struggled to understand how something so senseless could happen to 2 kids who represented everything good about the community. The Christian and Newsom families refused to let their children become statistics. They attended every hearing, every pre-trial motion, every day in court. Gary Christian once said that when he walked into the courtroom, he felt like he was walking into the lion's den, but he wasn't going to leave without fighting for his daughter. However, the first trials began in 2008 and continued for years. The prosecutors laid out the timeline, connecting evidence from the house, the vehicle, and the railroad tracks, and witness after witness painted a chilling picture of the final hours of Channon and Chris's lives. In 2009, Lamarcus Davidson, identified as the ringleader, was sentenced to death while Latalvis Cobbins and George Thomas were given life in prison without parole. Vanessa Coleman, the youngest, received 53 years for her role in the crimes, and Eric Boyd, at that time charged only as an accessory, would serve federal time for helping Davidson hide. For a moment, Knoxville exhaled as justice, it seemed, had finally been served, but then came the twist no one saw coming. In 2011, the state uncovered a shocking revelation that Judge Richard Baumgartner, who had presided over all 4 original trials, had been secretly addicted to prescription drugs. During the proceedings, he'd been obtaining pills illegally, even from defenders he once sentenced. Because of the judge's misconduct, almost every conviction he handled was suddenly questioned. Overnight, both families learned they might have to go through the trials all over again. The years of painful testimony would have to be repeated. The evidence would be reviewed again, and old wounds were opened. For Gary and Dina Christian, and Hugh and Mary Newsom, it was almost too much to bear. But they didn't give up. They showed up to every hearing, sat through every session, and supported each other. They made sure their children's names would never be forgotten. The retrials stretched on for years, and slowly, one by one, the convictions were reaffirmed. The ringleader's death sentence remained. Cobbins and Thomas's life sentences were upheld. Coleman's sentence was reduced slightly, but she remained in prison. And in 2019, 12 years after the murders, Eric Boyd was finally tried and convicted in state court for first-degree murder. After more than a decade, all 5 were behind bars for life, and 4 for the house. On 2316 Chipman Street, it was demolished in 2008. And today, the lot is empty, save for a small memorial, a quiet space where people still leave flowers, notes, and candles. For Knoxville, it's both a scar and a symbol of resilience. For both families, they have devoted their lives to honoring Channon and Chris. The Channon Christian Foundation was introduced, and it offers scholarships to students at the University of Tennessee. Each year, golfers gather for a charity tournament celebrating the sport she loved and the future she never got to finish. And the Chris Newsom Memorial Fund holds an annual baseball tournament in his memory, funding dozens of scholarships for young players at his alma mater. Mary Newsom, mother of Christopher, says that every time she sees a red cardinal or a butterfly, she feels her son's presence. And Dina Christian often speaks at community events about faith, perseverance, and the power of refusing to give up. They've transformed unimaginable loss into something meaningful, a light that reaches others in their darkest moments. 18 years later, people in Knoxville still remember exactly where they were when they heard about the case. For some, it changed the way they looked at their city, at how fragile safety can be. For others, it became a reminder that even in the aftermath of evil, goodness can still endure. Channon and Chris were more than victims. They were children, friends, dreamers, and builders. The promise of a future that should have stretched decades ahead. Although that future was stolen so fast, their story didn't end there. It became a catalyst for change, a symbol of courage, and a testament to how love can outlast even the deepest pain. From the ashes of tragedy came laws, memorials, and voices that refused to stay silent. And in the light of their memory, Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom continue to build what evil could not destroy, a legacy of strength, compassion, and hope that lives on in every life their story touches. If this case moved you, share your thoughts in the comment section. Like and subscribe so you never miss a story we bring out of the shadows. Thank you for watching.